Hello, friends. How are we all doing? We are on day... Is this day one? I guess maybe. Yeah, we can call this day one of the stream. Or of the flight. That one guy says hi. Adam Rhodes says hello. No, okay, everybody's coming. Griffin Phoenix... Let me try that sentence again. Griffin Phoenix asks my thoughts so far. I've got a couple of thoughts. Some of it's hard to say because, like, obviously bots have their limitations, so it's hard to tell how real players would engage with the game, but the 4v4 stuff, I'm not feeling it too much. What is good, though, is that because the game is so, like, externally focused and sandbox focused, a lot of these could be rectified by, like, you know, going into Forge and maybe putting some stuff around the place. I don't know. I feel like there's not enough of a drive, of a hook yet. All of the weapons are pretty lethal, to the point that, like, the power weapons, I noticed, don't really matter in this game. You don't have that moment of, like, all right, we've spawned on the pit, everybody rush rockets, you know? You don't really have that drive, but like I said, we're fighting against bots, so it's hard to tell. How much sleep did I not get last night? I did actually get some sleep last night. I did get some sleep, surprisingly. What's my past progress? Oh, I have no idea. I just checked my battle pass to give myself the silly-looking aviator helmet, but for the most part, I don't care too much about the battle pass. Oh, my girlfriend's in the chat, guys. Hello, Rebel. It really looks a lot like Halo 5, but they said it would be a reboot, so I'm confused. The movement, not the movement as in enhanced mobility, just like the under-the-hood feel of the game definitely feels like Halo 5. The slip space engine, it doesn't feel like quite as much of a leap from the Halo 5 branch of the Halo engine. How many times has the game crashed for you? A lot of... probably like 11 times maybe this morning. I was having a lot of problems, but things have stabilized for now. So, oh boy. Okay, we're in the middle of a match. Oh, and my FOV is super low. It's also, this game has default Call of Duty controls, like B is to crouch, right stick is melee, you know. Left trigger is to aim down the sights, which I'm hoping the aiming down the sights does not actually increase your accuracy like it does in Halo 5. I also noticed there's no D-scope for certain weapons like the assault rifle, which, you know, not sure how I feel about that. You probably should not be encouraging people to use close-range weapons at a range. But, okay. Here, let me fix my field of view quickly. As well as give us some silly view model positions. Oh, I'm being killed. Oh, no. That's okay. Somebody wants me to say frog? So, okay. Yeah, you know what? I'll bite. Frog. I'm probably going to regret that because I have a feeling you guys are all up to something and I fell into your trap. I'm playing actually with a controller today. For the sake of science. Yeah, we're playing on a controller today. Here, also let me set it to bumper jumper, because I don't like this default control scheme. But I do understand, like, most modern games play like this. So for the sake of, like, onboarding new players, they'd be able to pick up the game really easily because the control scheme is familiar to them. The one concern I would have actually about that, though, is teaching players the wrong lessons. Because I do think, like, what buttons you have by default, that does impact the way a player learns. Like, if you put melee on an important button, like the right bumper, they grow accustomed to the fact that, like, melee is a more important thing in this game. Oh boy. My sensitivity is really low. Hang on, I'll fix that. All right. Controller. Look acceleration. Here we go. Let's maybe get it up. Okay, yeah, that feels a little bit more comfortable. Are you on console or PC? Oh, PC every day. I use Bumper Jumper. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Bumper Jumper in Halo, just because if I'm playing with a controller, I like that I don't need to take my aim off of the movement stick, you know? Because in order to press that A button, you have to get your thumb off of the right stick and tap A, and then quickly bring your thumb back. So I like that I can just slap one of the bumpers, and that makes me jump, so I can, like, make aims while I'm hitting jump. Hope that made sense, though. Yeah, this bulldog's so dumb. I don't like the bulldog. How do I... Oh, I threw my bulldog on the ground. How do I switch grenade types, though? Okay, it's one of the D-pad. I think the gameplay feels solid, but there isn't enough content on the preview to know how good the game is going to be. I do agree there. This is very shallow in terms of the... I hate the term content. Whoa. Did you see how far that... I just tried to make a crouch jump, and the game decided to slide for me. Like, it didn't let me opt out of that. That was kind of weird. Yeah, the flight's a little bit shallow in terms of content, so it's really hard to get a good grasp on what this game is. So I almost, like, I don't want to give opinions about game's too shallow, combat's boring, like, because we're kind of playing with, like, half of the game at this point, so. What I'm mostly using this flight for is to get a sense of what this game's going for. So I noticed that plasma weapons have ammo now that you can, like, pick up. So if you just, like, run over to a plasma weapon on the ground, you'll just pick up ammo for it if you have one out, which I don't like that because I think it takes a little bit of personality and identity out of the plasma weapons compared to the kinetic weapons. But for the sake of, like, accessibility, making the game easier, that's probably why they did it. Like, less learning for new players to do. I would worry that you'd accidentally make the game a little bit too shallow, maybe. But it's probably not that big of a deal. Somebody said this looks like a 360 game. No. No. It's very clean looking, but I'm pretty sure just a single one of those, like, models, those 4K models, is probably a little bit more than a 360 could handle. Late Night Gaming, just want to put it out there that ping systems in games are good for people who aren't able to use vocal communications because of disabilities, so it's a good thing for accessibility. Yeah, that is a good point in favor of ping systems. It does make them more usable, in my opinion. It does make them more usable. Aiming down the sights or plasma weapons. Yeah, just on a technical level, this game can't look like a 360 game because it's pushing textures, assets, and geometry complexity that the 360 would not have been able to run at 60 FPS at least. Do you like how sprinting resets shield regeneration? Like in Halo 5? I don't think that the resetting of the shield regeneration really made that much of a difference in Halo 5. It definitely impacted the game, but I think sprint was so kind of like problematic in Halo 5 that it's like that didn't do a whole lot to fix the issue of sprint in Halo 5. I guess I'm just of the opinion where I'm like, hey, instead of sprint, what if we gave players the ability to sprint, but in all directions, not just forward, and you can fire your gun while you're doing it, and maybe it automatically activates without you having to press anything. Basically, I'm like, we don't need sprint in Halo, but I know why it's there, you know. Folks like sprint in their modern games. Somebody says, plasma weapons use alien batteries. Like, why the fuck would it use ammo? It's been there since the Bungie days. Yeah, that's where I am on that. I think it makes the alien weapons feel more alien, that you can't just pick up spare magazines off the ground for them, outside of, like, the carbine, because, well, that thing did use a proper magazine. But, like, the plasma weapons, where they're battery-powered, the idea is you pick this thing up, you shoot it until the battery's dry, then you have to chuck it on the ground and find another one. Making all the weapons uniformly across the board have the pickup, it makes the weapons a little bit less distinct from one another. I'd prefer if there was a little bit more separation in terms of mechanics than the homogenizing. Like, all weapons can pick up ammo, regardless of context. I don't think it is like a game killer, though. It's just one of those things where, you know, it's a small thing, but I do think it matters in giving guns their own identities. Stardust says, just came into the stream. My opinion on Infinite Sprint is that it's a bit redundant, as it's only a teensy bit faster than your normal walking speed. Yeah, I did actually notice that. Somebody shared a pretty funny video on Twitter where he was able to keep up with somebody who was sprinting and he was just walking. And for me, that is a huge bonus. I don't think sprint needs to be in Halo, but if it's gonna be in Halo, I'd rather it be almost more like that, where it doesn't really impact the game in any way. It's just there so that players can have the illusion that they're sprinting. But I definitely get why some people would be a little bit pissed off about it. They'd probably want it to be a fleshed out mechanic of the game of its own. I'm just not a fan of sprint, so the fact it doesn't impact the game too much makes me happy. Man, my aim is all over the place. Yeah, look, see, okay, so the pulse carbine on the ground, see, I can pick up ammo for it. I'm like, this thing runs on a battery, though. How'd I pick up ammo for that? Personally, I'm a fan of the Halo 3 carbine sound. Yeah, the Halo 3 carbine had a pretty good sound. I liked when you eject the magazine from it, the thump sound that it makes. It's just really satisfying. Oh, missed that. I actually didn't know that these bots are on Marine. If they are on Marine. I thought these were like ODSTs or maybe Spartan bots. I guess I need to pay attention better to those blogs. You do need sprint in order to slide, so sprint kind of serves to make slide more predictable. I'd say, do we need slide, though? Like, does that add to the game in any meaningful way? I'd argue not really. It's mostly just there cause, you know. In 2014, Destiny came out, and it had a slide mechanic. Call of Duty began introducing slide mechanics and stuff, and for Halo 5, it felt more like it was just, you know, following what the big boys were up to. And now every video game has a slide mechanic, so it's really just here because... I don't really think every game needs a slide mechanic. Let's go pick up this drop shield. I do think games like Apex, though, are a little bit more inventive with their slides, where it's like, okay, we're going to have a slide mechanic. Let's make it have a bit of depth to it. It's not just there to tick a box. Like, there's an actual... Ooh, yeah. There's a point to it, you know? If you slide down a hill, you can actually gain momentum. ADS good or bad? I'm not a fan of aiming down the sights in Halo, because I think it makes the importance and role of a scoped weapon a little bit less special. And then I also think it encourages you to use certain weapons the wrong way. You know, like aiming down the sights with a plasma pistol. Like, Halo probably doesn't need that. But if it is just an aesthetic thing, and there is not actually an under-the-hood stat buff for aiming down the sights, then I guess, I don't know, you know? If the kids like aiming down the sights because it reminds them of their favorite video games, then I guess, you know? I think Halo can be more creative, though. Like the alt-fire modes, where you press the zoom button and instead you get kind of like an alternate mechanic for the weapon. I hope that Halo Infinite taps more into that than just giving every gun and aiming down the sights. I'm trying to read the chat while also... Hang on. We're going to get to a safe place so I can catch up to the chat just a little bit. Thoughts on the plasma pistol look? I'm not a fan because it's the Halo 5 model, but that is so subjective that it's like, can I really complain about that? I mean, it's a circle thing. It's got, you know... It's got the overheat mechanic, or overheat overlay thing on the back. Like, it's fine, you know? It looks like a plasma pistol, just fatter. I do actually really like the green coloration, though. Because Halo 5 had, like, blue with light blue coloration, which wasn't really great looking. There we go. So I do actually quite like the coloration on the Halo Infinite plasma pistol, you know? Purple and green, those colors complement each other. Spartan Shatter, in my opinion, sounds bad. Yeah, Spartan Shatter in this game, there's a lot of redundant dialogue that feels like just babbling for the sake of babbling. Like, take cover. It's like, thanks, game. Somebody said aiming down the sights has been in Halo since the first one. What's new? No, it actually hasn't. So the first Halo game had a scope that was on certain weapons, and you could click a button to use those weapons' scope. Like, it was... The weapons had scopes on them that you could use. You did not have aiming down the sights. Halo 5, though, did have aiming down the sights, where every gun in the game you could aim down the sights with it. I prefer the idea of the weapon is what's special. If the weapon has a scope on it, you can press a button to utilize that scope, which is a function of the gun, instead of just this player trait where you can aim down the sights with everything. Milo's Riston says, late night complaining. Do you think I'm complaining? Because people are asking me questions, and I'm giving my opinion. I don't really think that's complaining. Or I guess a better question would be, would you prefer if I lied? Would you prefer if I was dishonest and just pretended that I loved everything? Because I can do that if you want. I don't think you'd like that, though. The BR is beautiful. I love the BR melee is beautiful. I love the little toss you do. I did notice that. The BR has a pretty cool melee animation. I'm going to see if I can find it. Here, let me see if I can find it. I think that's a battle rifle over there. Okay. So look at this. There's this pretty meaty melee animation. Yeah, look at that. I like the way he tosses it back to himself after doing it. Yeah, just the animations are like pretty good in this game. And the ones that look janky, I assume it's just because, well, the game's still in production. Like I noticed there's... Yikes. Like, I guess blending issues of the different animations. Like you go into sprint, you immediately start firing, or you immediately melee, and you'll notice a bit of judder, which is like a blending issue between different animations. And that's, you know, that's stuff that's fixed by the final game, so. Yeah, somebody's saying it helps to be critical since this is a flight. Yeah, so I saw somebody actually in my comments section the other day who was saying, guys, it's a flight. Like, remember, this is a work in progress game, because somebody was wondering why something was kind of buggy or glitchy. And I actually do not want people to shut down those kinds of discussions, because the whole point of this thing is feedback, you know? The reason that we're testing is so that we can be critical, so that we can give feedback. So shutting down feedback on a feedback test flight, you know, it's kind of counterproductive. So I encourage you guys to be critical. What's important, though, is that you're specific in your criticisms. Like, articulate why you think a thing is the way it is, and that you prefer it the other way. Don't just be like, battle rifle sounds bad. Explain why you think it sounds bad. Like, be specific. That way the developers can analyze that, and they can understand where you're coming from and see if there's anything that can be done to solve your issue. So, like, as an example, a while ago at 343, back in 2017, 2018, I want to say, I had an interesting conversation with the audio director for Halo 5. Tojim is his name. I caught him in the lobby of 343, and we talked actually a little bit about sound design and stuff. And one of the things I told him about the energy shield, because at the time it was just, you know, Halo 5. Like, that game had a different energy shield sound. And I told him why the classic whoop sound mattered so much to me. And I said it was kind of like that, you know, in Left 4 Dead and CSGO and like all those Source engine games, there's that boop, there's that little like sound, that jingle, like boop, whenever you interact with something. I said it's an iconic sound that people associate with Valve games. And that's kind of what the energy shield sound is. Like, people remember that Mjolnir shield recharge sound effect. It's an iconic sound. And so removing it from Halo is a bit, you know, head-scratching, because that sound, ironically, you know, resonates so much with people. Oh boy. The pistol in this game looks so uncompetitive. This game has no skill gap at all. It's hard to say that. It's definitely a lot easier than previous Halo games, but we are also working with an unfinished sandbox. We're only playing with a few of the toys. So the pistol in this game, it seems to be more of, well, a sidekick. It's a little bit more of a sidearm in this game, I noticed, than like a proper, like, primary weapon, I guess. So like a primary weapon I would describe as the Combat Evolved pistol or the Halo 2 battle rifle. The idea is you have two weapon slots. One is for your primary weapon, the weapon that does the most killing. The secondary is for your gimmick weapon, your role-based weapon that you whip out when the situation calls for it. The pistol seems to be more of this interesting, like, it's not a primary weapon, but it seems almost like the goal of it is to combine it with a gimmick weapon, like the... So basically what you do is you drain the shields with a plasma weapon, then you quickly switch to this sidekick and land a few headshots. Like, I'll actually, even though I love the heat wave, I'll actually chuck it and show you what I mean. Here, okay, so we're going to get the plasma pistol, and now I'm gonna cook it up. We're gonna find a buddy. Boom, boom, boom. Did you see how fast it switched? That's what I think this thing is supposed to be. The idea is it's not a weapon you think of using on your own. Think of how you can combine its quick switching with a different gun. Here, we'll see if we can do it again. Oh, never mind. That's what I think the sidekick is trying to do. And hey, I applaud that. That's kind of interesting. It's like a thinking outside of the box kind of weapon. Don't just think, I can't get old killing sprees with this thing. Think about how you can combine it with a different weapon. There we go. Somebody says, have you noticed that the power-ups activate slower when being shot at? Just me? That might be the case. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to the power-ups that they did because they were clearly broken during testing. Like, they added that silly-looking trail to it. They added the slow power-up thing because probably during development, you could just activate it whenever you wanted, and it was broken and overpowered. So they have to add all these, I think as Favin put it, checks and balances in place. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the pocket power-ups. I don't think that they add much to the game. I think they harm the game a bit more. But I'm not going to complain about it, since if they do become a problem, they can just be patched out. How do you sound so good? You have 0 keyboard audio coming through your mic. The reason I sound so good, actually, is because I'm not using a keyboard. For day 2 or day 1 or whatever, I am actually switching to a controller. That way you guys don't have to hear the clicky, you know? I've been asking for a Covenant shotgun for years, and the heat wave feels like it's worth the wait. See, I don't think the Covenant need a shotgun, because the shotgun exists. Instead, can we make a new weapon for the Covenant? My audio got all screwed up. Do you hear that? The game got really quiet. I think with new weapons, it takes a lot of time and resources to create something new, because you've got to make animations for it. You've got to do concept art. You got to do modeling, texturing, shaders, materials and stuff. Then you got to playtest, balance. Like, it takes many months just to create a single weapon. And so instead of using those resources to craft shotgun, but for Covenant, make something new that's never been seen in a Halo game before. Make something crazy and wacky and wild, like a portal gun or a gravity gun, you know? Reduced audio is a known bug. Okay. How's the controller? The controller's pretty good. It's actually a PlayStation 4 controller, which I know is like, excuse me. I actually don't mind the PlayStation 4 controller too much because it kind of feels like Sony just ripped off the Xbox 360 controller. Which is kind of why I like it. I'm actually not the biggest fan of the Xbox One controller. So I have really long fingers. And it's easy for me to wrap them around the 360 controller because there's a lot more emphasis, I guess, on the grips. Where the Xbox One controller, there's a lot more emphasis on the body. And it just kind of feels like I'm like holding a frisbee if that makes any sense at all. I know that this is so bizarre. I just prefer the Xbox 360 controller, and I wish it was compatible with the Xbox One. So yeah, I don't actually mind the PS4 controller because it reminds me of the 360 controller a lot. Let me read some of these because I see some people are donating and I don't want to just let those slip. Mysterious Vagabond says, what do you think of the sticky detonator? Oscar Hernandez says, here's some money for chicken nuggets. Thank you, Oscar Hernandez. I can't promise the $5 will be for chicken nuggets, but you know what? I will try for you. I'll go out today and buy myself some chicken nuggets with those $5. I appreciate it, man. And as for the sticky detonator, I like it a lot, actually. I think it's probably one of Halo's most interesting, Halo 4 at least, definitely one of its most interesting weapons in the sandbox. And it's kind of a pity that it got, like, thrown out, you know? Of all the guns to return in Halo 5, the saw, but not the sticky detonator, you know, or the scatter shot. Like, the sticky detonator was genuinely pretty interesting. I do hope it returns someday. I stand the sticky detonator. And I see people on the Halo subreddit bring that up from time to time. They're like, remember the sticky detonator? That thing was pretty cool. And I'm like, yeah, you know, it was. I'm glad you guys are talking about it. I'm glad it has an underground fan club. Because that was a cool weapon. Fuck. All right. What are your thoughts on the reuse of the Reach assault rifle? I think some of it is definitely nostalgia, you know, which, fair point, Halo Reach is over 10 years old now. Like, there's gonna be a generation of gamers that grew up with Reach being the game they played as a kid. So they're gonna see that Reach assault rifle in this game, and they're gonna get hit with a wave of nostalgia for their childhood. Temporary Friend says, thoughts on no shoddy at launch? I don't like that. So I actually don't mind experimenting with ideas like the Bulldog. What I do mind is when it replaces, because, you know, weapons take resources to make, as we discussed. So the idea that it's like, we've got this tried and true thing, this thing that does have a role in the sandbox and benefits the game flow. We're gonna remove it so that we can make this new thing, which isn't quite as mechanically depthful and complex. If both of the guns were in the game, I wouldn't mind the Bulldog as much, but because one gun had to be kicked to the curb for the Bulldog, that's why I kind of have a vendetta against it. Dread is Dead says, here's $5 for gas to go get those nuggets. Thank you so much, Dread. I appreciate that. Benji's Gaming Endeavors says, love to see the spirit around Halo become what it once was. I'm not sure about you, but I'm loving Infinite so far. Cheers from the USA. Yeah, it's... So, there is stuff I don't like in this flight. As somebody said, you know, late night complaining. But the reason I'm not like, oh god, the game's in trouble, is because all of these things that I'm complaining about are things I could forge out. Like, okay, I think the Bulldog's boring. I'll just forge it out of some of these maps. I think the pocket overshield is not a smart idea for gameplay. I can just forge it out. Like, what's cool about Halo Infinite is that all of its innovations and changes and new weapons, they're external. With Halo 5, a lot of the innovations were internal. They were gameplay modifications. And you can't just forge thrust out of a map where thrust kind of harms the gameplay, you know? That's here to stay. Same with, like, Spartan Charge and all of that. So, Halo Infinite, the core gameplay is simplistic and generic enough to where if the sandbox is kind of bland, boring, and not that special, easy solution. Patch in some more interesting guns. It's just 343's given themselves a lot of breathing room with this game, and it makes me really happy. I think Halo Infinite is going to have a longer lifespan than Halo 5, just because 343 was smart in making sure that it was the sandbox that was innovative this time. You know? Make the gameplay kind of predictable and generic. That way, the craziness has to come from the toys in the sandbox. Thoughts on the skewer? I wish it would nail people to the wall like Half-Life 2 style. It would give it more personality. Yeah, I'd like that too. I saw someone bring up that it's probably because of the teen rating. I don't know if that's the case, because from what I understand with teen ratings, that's mostly with gibbing and stuff. Like impaling people, if there's like not, a lot of gore, that's relatively okay. So I almost wonder if it's like a tech issue under the hood, because you got to consider like ragdolls in Halo are already a bit of a meme. I wonder how that ragdoll would react or break or tank the frame rate if it got stuck to a wall and started like freaking out and phasing into the wall and stuff. I could actually probably ask some engineers about that because, I follow a bunch of people on Twitter. I'm sure somebody has interesting insight. Here, let me scroll up and answer some of these. Maybe get yourself a nice drink to go with those nuggets. This is Compact Kitty. Thank you, Compact Kitty. Man, you guys are paying for a full lunch. You guys are really kind. I hope you know that. Like, oh my gosh, I'm about to drop this controller. Okay. Yeah, you guys are nice. Last night, the stream that we had, that was probably the most fun I've ever had to stream in my life. My girlfriend, Rebecca, she's an incredible person. She's actually, so just in general, she's been a really positive influence on my life. Because of the fact she's critical of me. Like, when I'm on my bullshit, she calls me out on it. And something she had brought up is, like, you should try not being the most entertaining person on planet Earth for a stream. Like, don't try so hard. Just let your hair down a little bit and be yourself on a stream. And last night I tried that. I toned down the energy a little bit and just kind of talked like I probably would normally talk. And it was a lot of fun. It was just a really enjoyable stream. So, yeah, I appreciate you guys being here. This is fun. Something we're actually doing is, how would you guys feel about, if not a Twitch, maybe a different YouTube channel for late night gaming streams? That way, like, you guys can, late night gaming can be for the scripted content that you all subscribed for. But then there's this separate channel where I exclusively stream. I was going to ask you all how you felt about that. Somebody says, I don't have any money. I'm only 14. Sorry. Don't ever apologize for not, like, don't apologize, The money is not expected. It is appreciated, okay? Don't feel bad about not donating. Literally, you just commenting is fun. Here's $5 for your nuggets to get some nuggets, even Groman says. I do actually have to gain weight. I had a physical recently, and I was not underweight, but getting there. So this is actually an interesting situation I am in, where I actually have to eat a little bit more than I've been eating. So I will get some extra nuggets on you. Thank you so much. Machine Snow says, they're fine on this channel. That's good to hear that you like it. I guess, is the live streaming stuff annoying, I guess? Because, like, I don't want it to be, there are some channels that I follow, and I really like their scripted stuff, but then they start doing the live streams constantly, and it's like, oh no, I didn't subscribe for watching a 4-hour live stream. I want some more scripted stuff. Walton Cromer says, thoughts on the lethality, time to kill of Infinite's weapons. Really don't want a repeat of Halo 5 where everything is viable at killing. So I think the goal is it's not the idea of viability, You want, like, viability in the weapons. It's more about what Halo 5 thought meant viable is the gun's lethal. And so you end up in a game that kind of feels like Call of Duty, where everybody's dying all the time and you're constantly being shot at from a range and, fast time to kill. And there isn't a lot of room for interesting, unique weapons because, well, people are dying too fast. The game is too fast-paced for you to have interesting stuff like the brute shot. I do think a low time to kill is a little bit healthier for like having like a bizarre, weird, unusual sandbox and having a lot of interesting weapons to play around with. So I do think the time to kill is a bit fast in this game. I do hope that they slow it down just a smidge. Eric Raphael says there's five more nuggets. $5 for more nuggets. A few more of these and you could throw a subscriber nugget party. Oh my god. All of these nuggets. I don't even like chicken nuggets that much. Ryan Pork says, and some fries. Don't forget condiments also. Also, I was hoping for some OG Halo plasma effects, like making plasma stun enemies or cripple them out of sprint. That could actually be interesting. Here's a question for you guys. So, Halo Combat Evolves plasma rifle, I can understand why they probably would not want that. Like the idea of a weapon that can modify your sensitivity. Like that sounds annoying to go up against. But the spirit of that. Like that as you shoot enemies, it affects them in a certain way. What would be an interesting mechanic for like a plasma rifle? Like if you're able to sustain your fire on an enemy, what do you think would be an interesting secondary mechanic that could happen? Jeb Hayher, I think the name is, says, have you noticed you can now replenish energy ammo? I did actually see that. We commented on that earlier in the stream. I was of the opinion that I wasn't a big fan, because I kind of prefer that the battery weapons have a solid separation from kinetic weapons, you know? This thing runs off of a battery. I don't feel like I should be able to pick it up like I can spare clips on the ground. Or pick up ammo for it like I can spare clips. I think it kind of gives the weapon an identity that it doesn't behave like other kinetic weapons, you know? This thing's a plasma weapon. Of course you can't pick up spare clips for it. You gotta pick up a new one if you feel like the battery's too low. That's how I feel, though. Air Bear says, grab yourself a nice milkshake while you're at it. I appreciate the $5. More Shoe says, your voice is nice to listen to. You should do audiobooks. People have said that. People have... It's hard, I guess, to process compliments about my voice just because I've been listening to it my whole life. But, I mean, my girlfriend says the same thing. I appreciate it. The compliment warms my heart. Component Games says, here's $2 for some tax. We're just paying for all these meals now. Oh my goodness, that guy has an overshield. Yeah, see right there, that I felt like that wasn't really fair, you know? I started firing at him before he activated it, I'm pretty sure. I guess it's just kind of like with the rocket launcher, there's a lot of ways that you can like dupe somebody into missing shots and stuff. You know, there's a way that you can dance around the rocket launcher and get a guy to waste all of the ammo he has for it. With a power-up, though, it's either kill him or he's gonna kill you because now he has overshields. You know, there isn't a lot of room for counterplay with it. It's just be faster at killing him before he can activate that thing. Because he'll be unstoppable once it's activated. And I guess before, with the power-up, if it's in a set place on the map, there's at least that level of predictability that you know if someone's hanging out around that area, they will immediately pick up the power-up from there, so stay away from that area. Here, it's like, it's kind of all over the place. You know, you turn the corner, and you run into a guy, and you see that they have a power-up, and you react a bit too slowly, and now, boom, they have better stats than you, and you just can't do anything but die. How do you feel about the sound design so far? Halo 5 kind of tired me... Oh, it's scrolling a little bit too quickly. Let me read some of the chat. Mookhead says, I'm just tipping because I love the videos. Keep it up. I appreciate that. I'll keep making them, okay? I appreciate that. What do you think of the plasma pistol rapid fire sound? Let me give it a listen, actually. So, this is probably an interesting opinion. So I know like a lot of people criticized Halo 5 for pew-pews. They don't really like the plasma weapons sounding like that. My actual issue with Halo 5's pew-pews, its plasma weapons, is that they didn't sound very pew-pewy. So what I like about the Bungie games is they used a pretty popular laser gun stock sound effect for the plasma weapons, and just like in Halo Infinite, it sounds like a little toy laser gun. I like that, you know? The plasma weapon sounds like something like you could picture like a little UFO coming down, and the little Martians with their little ray guns and pew 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 shooting at the humans. I like that. I like when alien weapons sound like cartoony laser guns. And my problem with Halo 5 is that, well, they didn't sound like cartoon pew pews anymore. Oscar Hernandez says, when do you think about what do you think cause when do you think about it? When you think about it, it could be because the Banished don't want to waste any of their weapons by making them disposable, so they're engineered to be more efficient. So what's interesting is Halo does actually have a lore reason for why you can't pick up plasma batteries. It's because the UNSC just doesn't know how they work. Like, they're alien, you know? It's like, okay, this is like a little bit weird. We know that the Covenant need to use these like recharging stations to recharge the batteries. We don't know how to make this technology portable. So that's the lore excuse for why you just kind of got to chuck your Covenant weapons once they're out of battery. Desert Fox says, what do you think of Dark Souls? I just beat my first SL4 run on DSR and was wondering what you thought of the From Software's works. I love From Software as a developer. Their games are very hard to get into initially, but I think it teaches you by using death not as a punishment, but as a gameplay mechanic, you know? In Dark Souls, you never really reset to last checkpoint. You failed. Like, it just means, like, you're not quite there yet, so you're respawning back at the bonfire. Try again. And I think that's interesting that they treat death more as a mechanic than a harsh punishment. I really like FromSoft games. Bloodborne is one of my favorite games of all time for that reason. Compact Kitty donated £5 and said, this is for deep fried Halo. And if you guys don't know what that's about, check my Twitter. We had a wacky 2 hours yesterday deep frying Halo Infinite. Creepin' Jesus says, just in case napkins, they had a nutso tax added. Also, how do you feel about the sniper zoom? I feel like the first level of zoom is a bit strong. Okay, so the first level, I actually do agree with you there, but this is where I'm going to propose an interesting idea. Let's keep that first level zoom that strong. Maybe this isn't the right map for the sniper then, because this is a relatively close quarters map, right? Maybe the sniper, it's not the right fit for this map. So let's see in future flights if there are maps that have longer sight lines where maybe the sniper rifle would be more appropriate. Like, suddenly that zoom setting doesn't feel so strong anymore because the sight lines are long enough for it to feel good on. I think that's something a lot of people could probably maybe consider a bit more, is sometimes we don't need to tweak the balance of the gun. Sometimes it's just not the right map for the gun. And that's what's kind of fun about Halo Infinite, you know? That this external sandbox focus does mean that is okay. That is okay. We don't need to nerf the sniper rifle zoom level. We can just take it out of the smaller maps where it's a little bit too claustrophobic for the sniper to make much sense. Have I played SPV3? I actually have played SPV3, and I've seen the people clowning on my opinions on it, which I'll get into in a second. Somebody says, have you heard of a game called Deep Rock Galactic? ODS2 Open Up says that. So it's interesting you say Deep Rock Galactic, because that is a game my younger brother Vasily, was super into for a while. So If it makes you feel good. So I haven't had the time to get into Deep Rock, unfortunately. What I can say is the art style is very good for that game. The animation quality is unusually good for that game. And I think it's got a very, very charismatic presentation. And my younger brother is super into that game. So I hope that that makes you feel good, that a relative of Late Night Gaming is, like, really into Deep Rock. He's trying to get me into it, and I think I'm gonna try to see if, like, once things calm down, if I can just properly grind and get into Deep Rock, because it's a really fun game. As for SPV3, I think it is messy, I think it is bloated, and I think that's kind of cute. That's special, you know? It comes from just a overwhelming love of Halo. That's why it's so bloated. It wants everything from Halo in it, and I think that's kind of precious in a way. I can't get too mad at it, because it's just a, whoa, okay, hang on. What do you think if they re-added the fuel rod cannon, but gave it a laser-guided mechanic, a la the Half-Life rocket launcher? That would be a cool idea for a weapon, actually, that you could guide the rocket. Kind of like that Wreck weapon from Halo 5, right? But the reason I went, whoa, is we got to stop for a second. Banzaken donated $150, I think. This is. SEK? I'm not sure what currency that is. He says, here is a token of appreciation for all the content that I've been enjoying on your channel. Also, short question. Does teabagging have any effect on a corpse in this game? Wow. That, I appreciate that token of appreciation, man. That, wow, okay. I'm kind of at a loss for words. That's really kind of you. Thank you so much. As for the teabagging, why don't we... Here, we'll test it out right here. Damn it, it doesn't look like there's any physics tied to the teabagging. Wait. Guys! Guys, I think there's physics associated with the teabagging. Hang on, we gotta double check and make sure that wasn't just like a ragdoll fluke. We'll test it out on this boy. Oh my god, guys! The body's reacting to the teabag. I think there's ragdoll physics for teabagging in this game. I hope that's not an oversight, because the game's in production. Huh. That's $18. Okay, all right. That's $18. I thought that was $150 for a second. I was like, holy moly. $18? I appreciate that. Oh, it's Swedish. It's funny you say that, because my sister actually recently moved to Sweden. She lives in Stockholm now. And she loves it. Shoot the brute dummies and watch their armor. Yeah, I didn't actually notice that earlier. You can shoot off the brute armor. Here, look at this. Okay. Oop. Here, we're going to give myself a little bit of breathing room. Deploy that. Yeah, see? The sidekick's kind of cool, you know? Is that the most crazy gimmick in the world, that it swaps fast? No, but it's something. Here, let's go over here and pick up these brute spike grenades. If I remember right, Quindel Hoyo said that because the logic is that they use a knife to stick into things, in the campaign it'll kill grunts instantly. It'll basically be like a throwing knife that then explodes. Which, I guess so some of the fun of throwing sticky things at grunts for me is that they will then take that thing over to their buddies and detonate. But I guess if, you know, the plasma grenade still sticks, I guess that's okay. Temporary Friend says, remember when holograms would teabag? Oh man, those were the good old days. Yeah, from Halo 4. Halo 4 had an Easter egg where if you sent a hologram armor ability over to a dead body, the hologram would begin teabagging. It was a pretty funny Easter egg. Teabagging's fun. I mean, it's less fun, you know, when people get, like, weird and kind of harassy about it. Like, when you've got, like, you know, women that are playing a game and, like, everyone starts teabagging them. But just in general, as, like, people memeing on each other, I think teabagging's pretty funny. The Chilled Manic asks how the new shotgun is. I don't like it. The Bulldog. I think what made the shotgun cool, like, as the thing that made it special, that separated it from other guns in the Sandbox, was that you had to manually load in each shell, and that manual loading creates stories in the gameplay rhythm. Imagine you've got 4 enemies closing in on you, and your shotgun's empty. You've got to add 1 shell, 2 shell, 3 shells, so you've got to, like, time and prepare for the enemies as they approach. That's a story you can't really get. Like, what you could probably do is you could load in 2 shells and then see if you could melee the other 2. There's a lot of different emergent combat stories that are formed just around a reloading mechanic. And by stripping that out and just making it clip in, clip out, ready to go, the Bulldog's a little bit less interesting than the normal shotgun for me because of that. Here, let's read some of these comments while we're loading. Somebody was asking me my opinion on the VK78 Commando. You know, okay, so off the bat, I'm not really the biggest fan of the design, because it's kind of weird that a human gun in the Halo universe, that a UNSC weapon doesn't have a bullpup reload. It's almost like one of those things where it's kind of like a stormtrooper in Star Wars. Of course the stormtroopers are white. They're stormtroopers. They're all white. So seeing an automatic UNSC weapon that does not bullpup reload is kind of bizarre, but it has been clarified that it's not actually of UNSC design. It's actually kind of like this outdated old rifle that was used by the Outer Colonies. And with that context, it's like, so that's why it doesn't look like a UNSC weapon. And then mechanically, so I don't think the Commando's that special, but it does seem like 343's first attempt to introduce a ranged automatic weapon to the Halo series. And if that means that the assault rifle we can return to normal, where it's the close range weapon that you shred at a close range, and if you want to shoot people at a distance, you gotta pick up a ranged weapon, then, you know, okay, the Commando can exist. The problem is that the assault rifle is also ranged in this game. So it's kind of like you've got 2 ranged automatic weapons. What is your favorite fire rate? I think the Commando would stand out a bit more if the assault rifle didn't have the crazy range that it currently has. Irish is saying, the saw, hello. I pretend the saw doesn't exist because I think it's a bad idea for a gun. Just in general, like Halo 4 and 5 Sandbox is a blur for me, where I just pretend those were just like accidents. No, that's a little bit mean. Yeah, the saw was an attempt. I guess we could say then that the Commando was a second attempt to make a ranged automatic weapon. And granted, I do think it is a more interesting execution than the saw, which is just assault rifle, but more bullets. That was embarrassing. I wasted so many shots. Hey, Late Night, I was wondering how the enemy ally... Here, let me see. Let me scroll up a little bit. I think I missed that. Hey, Late Night, I am wondering how the enemy ally highlight system is working for you. Seems like there is plenty of room for second guessing a player. Yeah, I did notice that actually. There's a lot of moments where the outlines will glitch out and not render properly, or there will be too many players standing in one place and they've all got like armor coatings that have red bits on them, and so I can't quite make out. And the problem is, it's nothing I can do. I just have to wait for the game to finally clarify to me which one is the friend or the enemy, because there's no more team colors. So everyone is just running around in crazy colors, and I gotta wait until the game solves its shit and tells me which one is the enemy. And I don't really like that, you know? I understand that people really like player expression, but if the HUD bugs out for a second, and because there is no way without the HUD to tell who is on your team and who isn't, like, that's a bit of a problem for me. I prefer team colors for that reason, you know? If the gamer tag above the player is glitching out and it's not there, well, I can take a look at their armor. Are they red or are they blue? The idea that team colors is this outdated thing that Halo needs to move away from is something I fundamentally don't agree with. You know? I also don't kind of like that the way that Halo Infinite went about for telling teammates apart is a giant glowing artificial outline that's not very organic. Because I also think it removes a lot of stealth from the game. Stealth is I mean, granted, Halo isn't a stealth game, but, you know, if you can sneak past an enemy by staying cleverly hidden in the shadows, like, you should be rewarded for that. That's something clever you did. And so the idea you just can't do that anymore. Because if you're hiding in shadow, you have a giant cartoon outline around your body and an arrow pointing at you that says, hey, look over here, shoot this guy, he's trying to sneak. Like, I don't really like that. It's why games like Apex I can't quite get into, because Apex is a little bit more about, like, the core mechanics of it. You know, it's not really about stealthing around. The idea is you've got these weapons, you've got these abilities, and you're playing off of each other. Like, you can always see people coming. But for me, I kind of enjoy PUBG a bit more. Because I do like that there is that room for error where it's like, what, was that somebody off in the... I'm not sure. Because nobody's glowing in that game. Here, once I die, I'm going to read a few more of these comments. Those are my opinions on the cartoon red outlines around everybody. So a question I'd actually ask then is, okay, we can't have red versus blue because you guys want to show off like the coatings that you bought and stuff, which is fair. What is a system that is not a giant red outline that you would design to tell friend from foe then, that also lets you show off your coatings? How would you design a system, you know, that allows for a bit of stealth and lets you show off your coating and lets you tell who is a friend and who is a foe without like a giant red outline around enemies? All right, let's read some things. What are your thoughts overall on the Infinite demo so far? Says Tora. I'm not too sure yet. We're still a little bit too early to tell what exactly this game is. But there is some promise. The gameplay is simple and generic enough to where there's a lot of flexibility and room for interesting gimmicky weapons and map traversal systems, which I'm a big fan of. But I do think the time to kill is a bit too fast for these weapons to shine. Taco Dealer says, fine then. Make the saw act exactly like the Combat Evolved AR. Problem solved. Also, multiplayer shooters have been fine without red and blue colors for years, to be honest. Well, so make the saw act exactly like the Combat Evolved AR. Problem solved. I'd say make the AR act like the Combat Evolved AR, right? We don't really need a saw, do we? And then multiplayer shooters have been fine without red and blue colors for years, to be honest. Yeah, but we're talking about Halo, right? We're not talking about multiplayer shooters. You know? With Call of Duty 4, for example, 2007's Call of Duty 4, how you could tell an enemy from a foe is, does that look like a Marine? Or does that look like a terrorist or an insurrectionist? Like, the uniform that they're wearing also plays the similar role to red versus blue. You know, there's always been ways to identify teams, even with the newer Call of Duty games that have, like, the heroes and the specialists. There are specialists for either side. You can't just be whatever specialist you want, regardless of side, you know? That is kind of like a team color, in a way. The problem with this game is everybody can have whatever color they want, regardless of team, and you've got to rely on a red and blue outline, and when that red and blue outline fails, which it does sometimes, in this tech test at least, you gotta wait for the game to catch up and let you know who it is you're supposed to be shooting at, because there's no in-game way without the HUD to tell who is on which team. Casey Lawton says, what if players did not have team colors in the pre-game and post-game animations, but was still red versus blue in-game? I would not actually mind that. Like, when you've got, like, your match showing off screen when the match starts, you can maybe see all your Spartans, like, gearing up, and you could see, like, Marines painting down their armor so that you can tell, you know, like paint like buffing the armor to shine it up a little bit, like before the match and stuff. They're painting on the team colors, like, yeah, this guy's on the red team, this guy's on the blue team. And then in the post-game screen, you can see like the paint being washed off, and you can see the awesome coatings underneath. Because when you're in a team match, you know, you're with the team. This isn't all about you. You're all on the same team. You're sporting team colors. You're representing each other. You know, it's not all about you, boo. It's about the team. Gus Torres donates $1. I appreciate that, my friend. Mark Hall says, friends have green tags and enemies are plain. That's an interesting idea. But for tags, though, what would happen if that tag failed? You know, because in classic Halo, sometimes you aim at an enemy and there's just nothing above, but you can tell what their paint job is, so you just start shooting because you know which team they're on. How would you account for if the HUD fails you? SK8 Nate says, boy, I'm glad you're not a developer. Yeah, I am too. Game development is hard. I feel like that was an insult, but I choose to accept it as a compliment. Because, yeah, I don't like being stressed. Game development is hard. Gavster Chief says, one thing I keep noticing is the very underwhelming feeling of those particle effects. For example, the Super Combine isn't nearly bombastic or cartoony enough, or the dull frag grenade explosion. Yeah, there's still some kind of like Halo 5-y, weak-looking explosion effects, but hopefully that's just because it's an early build of the game. Do you think naval combat from Battlefield 1 would work in Halo? Lots of open water. It could. Something that might be interesting is how would water affect your core gameplay? Something I kind of would love to see Halo maybe experiment with is gravity volumes, but for underwater. So suppose you go underwater and your gravity is affected, and you can kind of do those moon jumps underwater because, you know, your Spartan's heavy. He's going to sink. You can't swim. So you just kind of like a moon bounce when you're under the ocean. Could you imagine how cool, like, an overcharged plasma pistol shot would look underwater? Like the bolts traveling and sizzling through the water, like the trail of bubbles and steam rippling through. Like, that would look pretty cool, right? Underwater. Hell, like Spartans, maybe you could like turn on a headlamp when you're underwater and you could see like your Spartan's headlamp cutting through the murky depths of the water. That would be kind of cool, because my only concern about naval combat would be that you get trapped in your vehicle. You know, you take to the water, and if you dare get out, you just instantly die, because Spartans are allergic to water. That would be my only concern. What about allies just have the blue and green outline? Enemies have nothing. That might work. That might work. Just again, it's like the glowing outline. What if that glowing outline fails on certain players? You wouldn't be able to tell if they were your friends. Something I think might be interesting is maybe have like red and blue coatings, and you can customize the kind of red and blue coating. Like, you can have, like, flames on your Spartan, like, you know, kind of like, I think of, like, the Michael Bay Optimus Prime. You can have those flames and stuff like that. Rocket League also does something pretty good with red versus blue, which people have said, like Sterling Burton, who says, you have 2 Spartans you design. Red team has yellow, red, and black. Blue team has green, purple, and white, like Rocket League. Yeah, something like that. Lucas Phoenix says, what about just highlighting teammates and not highlighting enemies? Highlight equals friend, no highlight equals foe. So there would be some more confusion there in that, what if a teammate stepped behind an enemy and their glow, because you can see teammates through walls, their glow bled through the enemy's body and you misinterpreted that as the enemy glowing blue? Because that can happen. In fact, that's actually happened accidentally in some of the games that I've played. That's kind of the problem. There's a lot of room for misunderstanding what it is that the HUD's trying to tell you. I don't understand your issue with the red glow. You can change the color too. Okay, let me try to rephrase it. Maybe I'm not making like a lot of sense. Okay. While I was playing earlier today, there was a moment where the red glow was maybe bugged or it was too faint. And because of that, I could not tell whose side that player in the distance was on. I had no way of telling because now the HUD was not giving me that information. The guy was like right there, I would say. I couldn't tell whose team he was on. There was no glow. And because there's no red versus blue, I couldn't just say, oh, well, the HUD's failing me. Let me just look at his armor. Ah, he's a blue. I'm on the red team. That means that guy's an enemy. I had to wait until the game correctly applied a glow to him. Then I could be like, ah, okay, that is a friend. That's a problem. I could not play the game until the HUD clarified itself. Does that make a little bit of sense, at least? Now, that was a small moment in the game, but it was enough of a moment to where it was a little bit jarring that I had to pause for a second and wait for the game to catch up and clarify to me who is enemy and who is foe. That's a problem Classic Halo did not have. You can always tell who is on whose team by the color of their armor. Ethan Conley says, you are making sense to me. Keep it up. And to be fair, if I do just sound like I'm speaking in gibberish, you know, where it's like, dude, never been a problem to me, that's okay. That's good. I wish it was like that for me too. You're probably gonna not have an issue with the outlines, and I actually envy you, okay? That is okay, by the way, not having an issue. I at least hope that while you don't have an issue, you can maybe understand why I do, you know? Like, you don't need to now have an issue with it yourself. You can just be like, oh, okay, I see where you're coming from. And continue to, you know, not really let it affect you. But keep in the back of your mind, like maybe, okay, I can see why Late Night Gaming maybe had an issue with it. I'm enjoying it, though. Spikefish says, what about having the team flag attached to the armor? Or maybe a black backpack with appropriate team colors. See, that would be cool. I'd like if maybe like the Spartans had attachments on their legs or their wrist or their chest that did sport a giant team indicator that wasn't related to the HUD. It was just part of the armor's geometry. That way I could tell who was on whose team. That way, when, you know, that moment I had earlier where the highlight system failed and I couldn't tell who that player was, I can look at their thing and say, oh, well, they have a blue attachment on their chest, so they're one of my friends or they're an enemy. Or some people have brought up, like, the lights that Spartans have on their armor. Make those glow the color of your teammates, kind of like Gears of War. That way you don't need to rely on the HUD. And in the occasion that the HUD will fail, which it does sometimes does, you can at least tell who is who just by looking at the glowing or the color of their armor. ACB says 343's determination on keeping hit markers confuses me, as Halo has always had a form of hit marker in the way of shield flares. Now the hit marker takes up most of the action just for dopamine hits. Yeah, so that's an interesting, the dopamine hit aspect. There definitely is some of that. In fact, probably most of that, you know? We like seeing the hit marker. We like hearing, we all remember the kind of classic Call of Duty, you know, that sound when you're hitting shots. It does make your brain feel good. So there is definitely some of that. And I do think there is, you know, that is a valid reason to include something if you want your game to kind of feel nice. I am more of the opinion that you can do that without a HUD-y hit marker sound. But the reason for the grenade hit markers, I'd assume... Or no, you didn't even mention hit markers. You just mentioned grenade... Or you didn't mention grenade hit markers. You just said hit markers in general. Yeah, I don't really need them, you know? Shield flares for me. And I do think hit markers, you can accidentally not put a lot of emphasis on your game's artwork. Because the other day we were testing out explosions from the rocket launcher, and I couldn't actually see the explosion because the hit marker was too big. It was obscuring the explosion that was happening. So I had to fire the rocket and then look away. That way I could have portions of my screen where the explosion took place and I could get a good look at that. Hey, let me know if you tried to change the color of the outlines. Maybe if you change it, you'll have a better experience, Winky Face. Oh, it's not about the color of the outlines. It's not about the color, like red, blue, green, pink, whatever. It's about the fact that there was a moment when I was playing, and the game failed to render an outline on a player, and I had to wait until the game applied the outline correctly before I could tell whose team they were on. So it didn't matter what color it was. I would have had to wait. Can you turn off hit markers? Asks Unicorn. You cannot turn off the visual, which is a bit annoying, but you can turn off the sound, which I do appreciate. Andrew says, red versus blue warrior paint and can customize the pattern. And then those patterns can be the red versus blue. Lets you preserve customization, but have the indication. Yeah, I'd like something like that. Maybe instead of a full-on, like, armor coating and stuff. I mean, you could have your armor coatings for, like, free-for-all matches, firefight, and stuff like that, custom games. But for team-oriented, maybe you can customize the way that your red and blue paint job is patterned. I just think there's a lot of, you know, there's a reason that sports teams have team uniforms. Granted, you know, we'll see how that changes with as technology evolves. Maybe all their helmets will have like silly red outline stuff. But I'd imagine also for like a sports player, you do need to train your reflexes, you know? Your senses dull over time if you don't keep them properly sharpened. And so if you let the game baby you, and, like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about who's on whose team. I'll take care of that for you. Like, your senses do dull over time, and it's important to keep them sharp. That's why, like, for me at least, you know, going from... there was this brief stint where I played Overwatch a really long time, and all the red outlines on everybody. When I went back to a game that didn't have them, I really sucked for a little bit because I was like, I can't see anybody, they're not glowing. And I had to kind of relearn that skill of being able to tell enemies apart from the environment. Like, it's a valuable skill to have, you know, you improve on it. I play COD and BF says, I disagree with you on a lot of things, but you're always so respectful and personal that I can't help but like you anyways. Keep it up. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, we don't need to agree on things. In fact, that's better if we don't agree on things. It keeps things from turning into an echo chamber. It keeps egos in check, you know? And it makes sure that we're all, like, learning proper online discourse, you know? We're being polite to each other. We're all humans. But it allows us to kind of empathize with each other, where it's like, okay, I don't really want automatic weapons, as an example, to be a thing that you can use at a long range. But I can see why somebody who takes guns a little bit more realistically, a little bit more seriously, they want that assault rifle to feel like a bit closer to like a real-life assault rifle. I understand that reasoning, even if I prefer the more arcadey way of balancing it, in that your Spartan, for the life of him, has no way to shoot that thing at a range accurately. What about name tags for allies and no name tags or red nameplates while crosshair hovers over them on enemies? So again, that's a solution that requires the HUD to be operating perfectly 100% of the time. If it operates only 95% of the time, then that system doesn't work, because that means there's 5% of the game where the game fails to tell you who is friend and who is foe, and that's not acceptable, you know, in a competitive shooter. Think of in-game ways that don't use the HUD. You know, it's gotta be 100% of the time. There can't be 95 or even 99. If there is any room for the game to fail on letting you know who is your team and who is your enemy, that's a problem that needs to be rectified. Oh boy. And things will get a little bit more confusing as players find out ways to abuse the outline system, like applying... I could imagine you could probably apply certain coatings and it would actually confuse people. Like you could have bright neon blue armor coatings and you could make sure to stay near players. And then that red outline gets a little bit lost in a sea of blue. And you could... That actually has happened to me a few times. There's an enemy who's wearing blue coatings, and because he's running around my teammates, that red and blue outline kind of bleed together, and I have to wait for them to separate till I can tell who is the enemy and who's the friend in that kind of, like, mess of body parts punching each other. Now, let's see if anyone else commented. Did you try disabling enemy outlines? There is not a way to disable the outlines. Perhaps the substitute for red versus blue could be the addition of certain playable alien races and having the team structured like how Invasion did in Reach. Yeah, something like that. Like one team are elites, the other team are Spartans. Hayden Langford says, what did you think of the Pulse Carbine? I think the design is all right. I think the default colors they did for the Covenant weapons and I like the default colors they did for the Covenant weapons as a whole. Yeah, the Pulse Carbine, you know, it's a little bit disappointing that once again we have a rifle, or not a rifle, but, you know, a gun from another world made by alien non-human races that is designed suspiciously like a human would, where it has a stock for it to put your human shoulder on, a grip that fits your human hand, and then, like, even a little ammo counter at the top, just like the human assault rifle. I like the guns to be a little bit more alien-looking. I think of, like, the plasma rifle, where it's like, what? You know? It's just so weird-looking. And then let's answer a couple more. Haven't played Halo in a few years, but I'm seriously considering jumping back on because COD isn't doing it for me anymore. Love the videos. Take care. Dude, I appreciate the $5. I hope that you join us for Halo Infinite, you know? Good or bad, it's exciting that there's a new Halo game out. Do you think there will be game modes at launch that are available for the free-to-play multiplayer version of the game, similar to Spartan Ops? I definitely hope that there is a third mode. If it's just weapon drills, multiplayer, and campaign, I think we might have a problem. There does need to be that chilled, laid-back, firefight type like experience. If there was a 0% chance of failure, would you be okay with it? Yeah, as long as it's 0. The outline system works flawlessly to communicate. I still wouldn't like that they're glowing, but my dislike of it would be shifted more towards I just don't like the presentation, you know? Which is entirely subjective. Mechanically, I have noticed moments in this gameplay where I honest to God could not tell who was friend and who was foe because the players were standing too close to each other and the outlines started to get a bit muddy. And their armors weren't telling me whose team they were on, so I just had to kind of chill out, wait for them to separate. You keep making references to the HUD failing as a reason to make an entirely new system rather than fixing the issue causing the HUD failure. I'm not proposing we make a new system, actually. I'm proposing the outline system is the new system, you know? We could just go back to the thing that worked. You know? Red versus blue worked. Thoughts on the map rotating weapons, i.e. live fire will sometimes have a skewer or sniper in the middle. I'm not sure how I feel about that either, because I also do think that learning weapon spawns is a part of the meta. It's how you grow, it's how you learn, it's how you get better. So having just, like a random power weapon will spawn in the middle of the map, you know? Kind of like the sniper, where we were like, why is this here, you know? This doesn't feel appropriate for the map that we're using. It's a little bit too long range. I do think there's value in having set weapon spawns, because it also makes sure that the maps themselves are unique. The gameplay experiences of them are unique. Like, this is the map where the rocket launcher spawns. That's the one that has 2 sniper rifles. If every match can have every weapon on it, then it's a little bit less unique. It's a little bit less special. You have a little bit less variety. Because I do think variety comes from having exclusive experiences on the map rather than every map kind of has the same experience. Ooh, the game is quiet again. Yeah, in short, I think Halo would benefit more from just having team colors. That way you know who is on what team and you don't need to let the HUD tell you, you know? Then you'd also have room for stealth because players could hide in the shadows again. And a problem that Halo 5 had, you know, because of its like art style, where it's like a little bit hard to tell what's going on at points. On some maps, you'd have players blending into the environment. Well, CSGO has a problem kind of like that, where they don't have cartoon outlines on people. And whenever Valve changes the lighting of a map for CSGO to make player visibility better, they would also take advantage of that to edit geometry. And they'd like release, think of Dust 2, a new version of Dust with better visibility, better lighting, like, and that's kind of celebrated, that maps can have sequels to them. And that's kind of why CSGO over the years has eventually grown into a game where it has some of the best map design in any shooter ever, because Valve has been able to iterate on those. If literally all we do is just made tweaks to the outline system so you can see enemies better, you don't need to change the map at all. And you kind of lose even that community aspects. Could you imagine if, like, 343, like, all right, blues are having some, blues are blending in too much into the environment. We're going to edit some of these corners. We're going to put some lights in them. That way you can see blues better. We're also going to change the staircase a little bit because players are having trouble on it. We're also going to move some of these, blah, 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 and then you could have your Kotakus or your IGNs. 343 releases Live Fire 2.0, improvement over the original Live Fire. And then you have community members arguing about, well, I like the classic Live Fire better, you know, and people would save it and they'd play on it, and debates would be generated. The community would be discussing which one is better, and the community would be alive and healthy, you know? Everyone would be talking. Eyes would constantly be on the game. And you don't get that if it's just edited the logic of the outline system. It's now a little bit more clear, you know? For team reconciliation, they could do something like Rocket League, with instead of red versus blue, do hot versus cold colors. And even let you pick a skin that works with that scheme. Yeah, could do something like that. I actually really like that idea. Yeah, that's kind of how I am. That's how I'm thinking about what you kind of unfortunately lose with the outline system is there is opportunity to capitalize on what CS:GO did with its map changes and its lighting changes and visibility changes, you know? If 343 did that, it could make headlines, but with the outlines, all you got to do is make a couple code tweaks so that the outlines are a little bit brighter, you know? You don't really need to change the map too much. And I think that's a lost opportunity that 343 could capitalize on. Remember when I asked you about bots in one of your Q&As over a year ago? Seems that our dreams came true. Yeah, I know, right? I'm so happy that bots are a part of Halo now. Like, this is just a net positive for Halo, having bots. Just little toy people to play with. Watched your channel a lot. Hope you're doing well. I didn't get a PC invite, so I'm just living vicariously through you. I appreciate that, man. If it makes you feel any better, this is a rough build of the game. There are a lot of bugs. There's a lot of glitches. If you aim down the sights, the muzzle flash for the assault rifle just doesn't appear. I assume because the camera view is too close to it, so it just despawns it, so it doesn't tank the frame rate. There's a lot of bugs. So when you finally do get to play this, you're going to play a significantly less janky version of the game. What we're playing is very rough. But I appreciate the money, my friend. Let's read this. I feel like with the direction we were going here, 343 can focus better on polishing future Halo campaigns rather than developing a new campaign every title. Yes, and that's actually a good point because so here's the thing about Halo. Halo, at least before Halo 4, I guess, where we started to have serious core gameplay changes, like sprint, no descope and stuff. Halo was always an iterative franchise. The idea was the gameplay was the same across the board, minus like walking speed tweaks or jump height. And the innovation came from external additions or omissions in the sandbox. So what 343 has set up here is a really solid foundation. You've got generic gameplay that's not that special, which means you've got room to add special weapons to the game through updates and stuff, which means campaigns in the future, campaign DLC, they could potentially be exciting because you'll be like, oh, that's the campaign DLC that has X weapon in it. I really like that weapon in that campaign DLC. There's room for the campaigns to be really special and it's exciting. It's an exciting time. Hayden Langford says, disregarding multiplayer balance, how do you feel for the gameplay? And are you more excited for the campaign? I'm definitely more excited for the campaign than I am the multiplayer. So far, what we've played, I'm a little bit about, but we are playing with half a sandbox, so I'm not making any opinions yet on the way that the game flows. I'm waiting until the rest of the sandbox is in, but very excited for the campaign. And I do appreciate that the gameplay is very toned down, the core player movement at least. We're watching your stream at my 7-Eleven on the big TV. A few of the customers are seeing the gameplay and are excited. LOL, cheers, man. Love the stream. Thank you so much. That's, wow. I'm being broadcast for an audience at a 7-Eleven. I hope that they're enjoying it. Boreal Nava says, what about just overriding an accessory color scheme or lights tech suits for the Spartans, depending on their teams? I like that idea. A few of you have actually suggested that. What if the Spartans have giant glowing lights on them? That could take away from stealth, you know, because if you're in a dark room and you've got these giant flashlights, or, you know, light up doohickeys on your armor, it could give you away. But at least for there, you wouldn't have the issue of what if the HUD accidentally failed to update? You know, or you get a little bit confused because the outlines are bleeding together. At least there, you'd be able to tell. I can't tell whose team they're on because I can't see the outlines. Oh, they've got a red armor. They've got a red light on their armor. They're an enemy. Is somebody spamming? Outlines should be optional, and when you turn it off, it's classic red versus blue, and you can customize the colors if you want, whether or not everyone is happy about the team showing. I'd be happier if there was a toggle. I mean, obviously you'd then run into the issue of gameplay perks, because red versus blue, players can sneak now. You know, you can miss. Where if you left those outlines on, players are glowing brightly, so there might be a tactical advantage to keeping them on, with the tactical downside of what if the outlines get a little bit confusing and you can't tell who's who. It's just kind of like then you start to get a little bit messy, you know, where you have like, well, what should we do? Should we have red versus blue, or should we have outlines? What is more overpowered? You start to abuse the accessibility option, because the outlines are also here for folks who are colorblind. And for those of you watching who have commented that, you know, you're like, I like it because I'm colorblind and sometimes I have trouble seeing people. I see you, and that is a valid reason to like it. My worry is not actually about that. I like that you can see the game now. What I don't like is that people like myself who are able-bodied, you know, like our eyes work pretty well, we are abusing the system that was designed to assist you, and it's helping us be even better at the game. It's almost like a wall hack, you know? I mean, a wall hack lets you see people through walls, but like, you know, I can tell that's an enemy there because he's glowing loudly. There's no sneaking from me. But then there's the occasional room for error where the outlines fail. It's just like, it's very weird. It's depending on the situation, it is either too strong or not strong enough, or it's not working and it's bugged and needs to be fixed. I almost wonder if, like, you know, for the sake of accessibility options, could we rather have red versus blue colors for team colors' sake, and you could edit the color of the coding? Like, if you have trouble seeing greens in blue backgrounds, maybe you can switch the blues to, like, a yellow or something that you think helps you see easier. At least there, if people kind of are able to min-max and, like, identify which is the most overpowered color combinations, we'd still all be in the same boat when somebody enters a dark room and they're stealthing. You know, colorblind and I guess, what do you call non-colorblind folks? Because I don't want to say normal eyesight, because that pretends that, like, colorblind folk, like, there are a lot of colorblind people in the world, you know? Are their eyes weird simply because their eyes function different from ours? No, I don't really want to say normal versus not normal. Like, my dad is actually colorblind. And that's kind of crazy that I'm actually on the exact opposite end, where I am very, very, very detail-oriented to the point that I can get overstimulated by too much color, just because it's, like, so vibrant and juicy and saturated. Like, my grass, the grass in my backyard, I hate the look of it because it's a mess of blues, greens, light greens, dark blues. It's just, like, too much color. Like, can all of you blades be the same shade of green, please? I wish there was an option in custom games for team colors for a legacy game type, though. Also machinima settings. I'm highly curious of those. It would not be smart if there wasn't, you know, forced team colors. I assume there will be. Also, have outlines or icons on allies. Enemies don't need an indicator if this is done. Simple. Jesus, says Sean. There would be the problem, though, that I keep having to say over and over again, okay? I can keep saying it if I'm not making sense. Maybe I can rephrase it. What would happen if the outline failed and didn't render? And you could not tell if that was a friend or a foe standing in front of you. Because, okay, foes don't have outlines, but teammates do. What if your teammate didn't have an outline because of a bug or a server overload or something? You'd have to wait, or you'd have to be like an idiot and fire at your friend until you see that outline pop up. Or what if your teammate stands behind an enemy and their color bleeds through the enemy, and you accidentally interpret that as the enemy having a blue outline, and the enemy gets a head start on killing you? Consider ways beyond the HUD to communicate players' information, okay? I would hands down take red versus blue or hot versus cold over emitting a glow that could get me killed should I try to hide for a second recharge / reload. Yeah, you know, because there is tactical value in hiding to recharge your shields. And you can't really hide if the game's giving your position away. In my honest opinion, Destiny does it fine. Teams with names and enemy only when aimed at or shooting, but UI needs to work always, lol. Thanks for the content, always enjoy it. Thoughts on guns not having an oomph feeling? I actually think the guns have a pretty oomphy feeling. I mean, some more than others, you know? Definitely there's still some work that can be done, but oh my god, did you see that guy just go flying? You okay, buddy? Yeah, we're both shaking our head at that poor guy. Destiny Crucible, I don't really like a lot. And there's definitely moments in Destiny where it's microseconds and not really enough to ruin the game, but I would be lying if I said that there were not moments in Destiny where I'm like, whose team is that guy on? I don't know. Because in a competitive shooter, it has to work 100%. If it's a HUD-based way to tell friend from foe, there can't be any room for error or bugs. You know? Matches can be lost depending on small little things like that. Okay, people are upset that I said my grass is blue. Let me clarify, okay? It's not blue like the sky. I mean, in the shade, it can definitely look. It's just like, you know, grass has a lot of texture to it. There are a lot of shades of blue. And sometimes damp grass or grass that doesn't get a lot of sunlight, it can take on more of a bluish hue than grass that grows in the light. And it just annoys me that I look at my backyard and it looks like a circus. It's just like all these different colors depending on where the grass is growing. I'm like, you all suck. Can you all just be the same shade of green and look pretty, please? Jake Roseman says, who cares? If that's about the outline, I'm going to ask now in the comments, do any of you care about what I'm saying? Is anything I'm saying pointless and trivial? So, Jake Roseman, if you start seeing people saying, I care, those people care. So that answers your question, all right? If you say who cares to a topic, you run the risk of the people who care showing up. That's not a very good argument, all right? Just generally in the future, you know? If it doesn't bother you, that is okay. That's a valid response. But it will bother some people. And who cares is not a good dismissal of them. Mamba says, what do you think about a split campaign where Master Chief does something in the story that intertwines with a storyline of your character? That could actually be interesting. Like, have the mainline campaign, I guess, be, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, have the mainline campaign be the Master Chief. The Chief is back, you know, it's the Chief story. But then have DLC campaigns feature your multiplayer Spartan as the hero. And maybe you can even run into the Chief. If that's what you're talking about, that could be interesting, actually. Stop this indoctrination. Grass is green. I'm telling you, man, it's not. Have you ever looked at grass? Grass can be green, but sometimes it's this ugly, murky, bluish color. It's very gross looking. Your point doesn't really hold up. There are other competitive shooters that have a system that works with a red name tag that don't have the issue you mentioned. Are you sure? Are you 100? Have you played those shooters? And you can say with confidence, it has never once failed you during gameplay. Because I've played Overwatch. And that game has a system like this. And there are moments in Overwatch where I can't tell because too many players are grouped up together and the outlines bleed together. So can we expect the grass rant video? We could probably actually expect a grass rant video, right? Should I do that? Talking about how stupid grass is? Are you sure you're not colorblind? No, color blindness would mean I'm seeing a little bit less variety, I guess, depending on the type of color blindness. The problem is the texture of grass is so different. You know, grass isn't always one shade of green. You got to consider the nutrients that the grass is getting, and that can come from the sun. Is the grass being overwatered? If it is, it might actually grow darker, which can look more blue than green in the shade and stuff. Like, grass is never a unified green color. It all depends on the kind of nutrients the grass is growing. So if you have lots of differentiation in, like, how humid an environment is versus if an environment is exposed to the sun a lot, like, you'll get a lot of different textures of grass. And my backyard is a bit of a swamp because I live in Virginia. So there are awkward moments where it's like a place of ground is a little bit more elevated. And so because of that, it's exposed to the sun more. And so the grass is a little bit drier on that patch of land. But then all the grass below it is kind of like in the mildew and the water. And so that grass is a lot darker. Nature's weird, man. You're one of my favorite creators, and I aim to be as eloquent as you one day. We had a brief talk about automatics in Halo earlier. I wanted to apologize if I came off as either sarcastic. That's okay. That's all right. Comments are comments, you know? Do you think they will add characters later in the campaign, such as Jerome, as part of the DLC? They could literally do anything, which is kind of fun. Yeah, don't worry. I saw the super chat as being ignored. Fireteam Osiris, the grass is green, jumps on the lawn. That's pretty good, actually. Fireteam Osiris, the grass is green. Let me see if I missed any other super chats. If I did, people, get on my ass about it, okay? As for, like, other characters, literally nothing's stopping them. It could be a lot of fun. Make an OnlyFans and just put grass pictures. I pay for that. That's not a bad idea. Plants absorb all colors of light, but reflect green. Technically, grass is every color but green. That's true, definitely, because reality exists in a bizarre situation where the reason that a thing has color, like, okay, so I've got a roll of red duct tape right now on my desk. I'm holding it. I'm looking at it. The reason this is red is because the material of this duct tape does not like that color of the light spectrum, and it is bouncing the color red off of it. And my eyes are intercepting it and interpreting it as, this is a red object. The reality is the object is not absorbing the color red, it's bouncing it off. People not knowing that bluegrass music gets its name from the color of fescue in the morning. Says Halo Wars 2. Oh, the video game Halo Wars 2 has an opinion on grass. Yeah, bluegrass exists, and it looks cursed. Also, bluegrass is a genre of music. That's interesting. I didn't know that. ACB Game says, I see a lot of people saying this system works in other shooters, but I tend to struggle when playing arena shooters that use highlights over colors. Yeah, and also, this system works in other shooters, therefore it will work in Halo. I don't think that's a very strong argument, because we're talking about Halo, you know? We're not talking about other games. And granted, we did talk about Counter-Strike Go and the idea of, like, lighting reworks and map changes and publicizing that and turning it into a whole community celebratory event. Those are map changes. You know, those are community engagements. You can learn about interesting ways to engage with your community. But the proposal of just kind of like taking mechanics from other games, that's where the conversation, we do need to discuss that a bit more. Because, you know, Halo is Halo. Halo is not a different video game. So adopting other systems from other video games, we need to really analyze if it will fit seamlessly into Halo. What will be gained by its inclusion, but also what will be lost, and what is a little bit more murky. Do you think the Combat Evolved Magnum look will come back as a variant, cosmetic, or a different pistol? I missed the super chat. Did I miss something? What did I miss? What did I miss in the super chat? I'm scrolling up currently. I'm hoping I can do it fast enough. As for the conversation about the Combat Evolved model, I'd imagine actually that the Magnum's probably going to come back as its own gun. Probably like kind of like Halo 5, where they tried to kind of mimic the stats and the handling of the old Magnum. Wouldn't that be cool if they brought back classic guns with their weapon handling being almost to a T like it originally was? That way you can recreate old combat rhythms in Halo Infinite, in custom games. Walton Cromer asks, top 10 grass models in Halo video when? It's really sad that I have to say it, but I do have opinions about that, and I do have my personal favorite grass assets from Halo. Blue Ridge Mountains, Bluegrass, take to the place I belong, late night roads, West Mama, the rest of the song, country roads. There we go. That was pretty pathetic. I hope you guys at least enjoyed that. I tried to save it as much as I could. It took me a little while to get what you were referencing. Axel Animation says, I love your vids and I'm sorry for spamming. Thank you for being one of my favorite YouTubers. Don't worry. Yeah, make sure that you're not spamming, but like it's okay. Unfortunately, Axel, there are a lot of people commenting, so sometimes comments get lost. Halo Reach had the best grass and foliage. It's interesting because I actually don't like Reach for that very reason that I mentioned. What the fuck is going on here? What? Guys, whose team are those on? Quick. I couldn't tell. The outline system failed. That's a bug. We'll fix it. But other bugs will exist. That was weird. That was a weird moment. But you have the colorblind gene, haha, somebody says. I don't think colorblind, like you can definitely inherit it from a parent, but I do think there is actually like other factors. Like I don't think it's just your dad's colorblind, you're also colorblind. I think what makes people colorblind is it's a little bit more complicated than that. Because I do actually believe my brother also isn't colorblind. You know what? That's actually a good question to ask him. Like, my brother actually has type 1 diabetes, which is kind of interesting. None of my parents have type 1 diabetes. I don't either. Genetics are weird, you know? Yeah, speak of the devil. The match starts and the outline system is bugs up. Granted, I assume 343 will not let a bug like that exist at launch. But stuff can slip through the cracks, you know? A game can never be bug-free. There will always be mistakes. And that made me die. Because I couldn't tell that cluster of people who was actually a teammate and who was an enemy. There was no way to tell by looking at their armor whose team they were on. I had to wait for the game to put an outline on them. I just looked up bluegrass and it still looks green. Am I colorblind? It's not like literally blue, you know? Like, I mean, you can look at the HUD here, like that's cyan. It's more like if you were to put that exact shade of green on a color wheel, you'd notice it blends a little bit into the blue. It's still definitely like green, but blue is being mixed in there. So it looks a bit darker and less like greeny, for lack of a better word. I'm like trying to look around to see if I can find like examples in this game of more of like what bluegrass. It's hard to explain. Bluegrass is just ugly. I hate the look of bluegrass. What I really like is like yellow grass, or like the really kind of like white sun-drenched grass that's been soaking up a little bit too much rays. I like that look for grass. I just like when my grass is kind of light and green. Somebody's asking if there's friendly fire. There is no friendly fire, which I think could present a problem if it's at least not if it's in competitive, or I guess if it's in social, because you could run the risk of something my buddy and I were actually doing earlier when we were playing was he'd stick me with a sticky, I'd run into a room and I'd detonate because of the sticky. I wouldn't be harmed by it, and the poor bots didn't know what to do, and my friend would run in too and he'd start shooting. There was just like nothing those poor bots could do. Now, could you imagine if you had two teams of players who are very good at this game and they could start abusing systems like that? Like, get one player to start spamming grenades into a room and send your 3 teammates into that room. You'd blanket the room in explosions that would not affect your teammates, and your teammates could clean up whatever poor stragglers are in that room. You know, it would just be detonations everywhere. They'd not know what's going on. If you have friendly fire, there is at least that risk of like, no, don't go in there. I just threw in a grenade. Somebody's actually talking now about breeds of grass. Isn't that interesting to think about, that like plants have breeds? They have different species. Like, have you ever looked up what an original, real apple looks like? The apples that you buy in stores, that's actually a breed of apple that we've like created over the course of many generations. Like, we manufactured store apples to taste and look like that. Natural grown apples in the wild that have evolved that way, they look and taste kind of different from what you buy in the store. It's really interesting. Without friendly fire, how is my teammate going to kill me for the sniper? Well, what's kind of nice about this game is... hang on. There we go. If a teammate's like, hey, give me your fucking sniper, you can be like, oh my god, okay, there, have it. You know? I don't want it anyways. You can toss your weapons on the ground now. What are your thoughts on the new plasma pistol? I'm not going to cry because it's the Halo 5 model, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I really like the sound design for it, though. I like the pew-pews when you fire it. It sounds like a little toy laser gun, and I like when my alien heat rays sound like that. You know, it reminds me of, like, cheesy, corny, like, I grew up on, like, H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. I read that when I was, like, 10, I want to say. 10 or 9. My parents had me do a lot of reading when I was a kid. So, like, that idea of UFOs, saucers, Martian heat rays. Like, I always think about that with alien stuff. So when, like, you have an alien gun in a game and it makes a cartoony pew, 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 like, that just warms my heart. Carter Wilson asks if I fixed my god-awful AR view model from yesterday. I did actually fix it. It does look much prettier on the eyes. Per my last SC, I think people shooting at you is a pretty good indicator that they're my enemy. Love the channel. What's your take? Yeah. What's your take on Sprint and Mobility in Infinite so far? So I actually like I don't like Sprint. I think we're kind of like, how about instead of you can only move forward at max speed and you can't fire your gun while doing it? Instead, you can fire your gun at all times and you can move in all directions at max speed. Like, I'm more a fan of that kind of game design. I think it's a little bit more simple, makes the controls easier. But this game, I don't mind the sprint, actually. I don't mind that it is kind of a little bit useless. Is this the only map available? For now, at least. I think more maps are going to unlock. Do you think the MA40 is the MA37 with just modified internal parts? What is that? MA40, MA37? So I've got a lot of things to remember. Something you guys should probably know about me is numbers I'm very bad with. Birthdays, dates for things, fictional serial numbers for fictional guns. My brain kind of ejects that information because it's got better things to keep a track of. I mean, maybe, dates are a little bit more important. But, so I know Halo takes place in like 2552 or something. Could not tell you what the months were or what the exact dates were. Same with like the weapon serial numbers. It's not a real gun, guys. I've got better things to remember, unfortunately. This thing's the assault rifle to me. Oh boy. Jason Brayman says, oh my god, there's some super chats. Jason Brayman, I'm sorry, buddy, but I see you. And yes, I do remember you. Lego Chief says, hello, Late Night Gamer. Will you play Killing Floor? It's a good game I think you would like. Also love your channel. It's funny you mentioned Killing Floor, because Killing Floor, the first one, is one of my favorite games of all time. I love Killing Floor so much. I played a lot of Killing Floor 2 during early access, and I think I burnt myself out on it, just because I played too much of it during the early access period, so when it did the full release, I had already played my fill. But, that's not to say I'll never play Killing Floor again. That was another example of something kind of fishy going on. So, okay, the player was cloaked, and he started shooting at me, which dropped the cloak. But the outline wasn't there. So, imagine if you're from a distance, and you see a guy who's coming out of cloak, because he's firing his gun. How are you going to be able to tell if that's a cloaked enemy? In classic Halo games, the cloak starts to come off, and you see those team colors, and you're like, oh crap, that's an enemy, and you start firing. In this game, you can't really do that. So I couldn't tell if that guy was an enemy. The only way I could tell was if he was shooting me, and by that point, he has the advantage, and he's going to kill me. There was no way to tell by looking at his armor whose allegiance he was on. And if I was trying to get the drop on him, I'd probably have an even harder time because he wouldn't be shooting at me, so I just wouldn't know, ACB Games says, here's my last super chat for the stream. I appreciate what you and the other Halo YouTubers do. Keep up the good work. Dude, I appreciate that you appreciate it. Something also to think about, so community arguments, community debates and stuff like, stop whining, and then people like, I'm so sick of the community debates. I think there's actually value to debates, like the outline coding system, all of it, aiming down the sights. The community's alive, As long as we don't get toxic with each other, and we actually start to understand why the mechanics exist and what they add to the game and stuff. Like, it's something I'm trying to do, actually, with Halo 5. Stop talking about it like it's this objective downgrade for Halo, and talk about it more like it is a very different kind of game to traditional Halo. Because some people like that difference. And I think if we talk about what we like in Halo and analyze Halo in that way, like, it's good. We're talking. The community's alive. Discussions are happening. That's the point of it, though, says Bob. Well, no, the point of it is when you're not firing, you're cloaked. You're completely invisible, except for that shimmer, right? When the cloak starts coming off, you're exposed. You're being exposed. It's like that cutscene in Spartan Ops where that guy is in the middle of that group of elites, and the elites notice that the camo starts failing, and they're like, oh crap, it's a Spartan, and then the Spartan fully decloaks. That's what that moment is. During the decloaking process, I still can't figure out whose team that guy is on, even though I can see that it's clearly a guy standing there, because the outline hasn't kicked in yet. I have to wait for the HUD to tell me if it is okay to now shoot at the guy standing in front of me. It's an awkward moment where organically the in-game artwork isn't doing a good job at telling you whose team that guy is on. You're not watching the game world. You're watching a HUD telling you what to do. That's at least how I see it. People are going to miss stuff from Halo 5, says Thor. Yeah, I assume the Halo 5 crowd's probably going to miss this, because this does play and feel closer to, like, a normal Halo game. There are concessions and changes made, though, that I do think, unfortunately, classic fans probably aren't going to be a fan of. Like the range of auto weapons, or kind of like the lack of certain things, like the classic shoddy. There's a lot of like weapon rolls that are missing, you know, as well as sprints. So it's definitely more of like a middle ground between Halo 5 and classic Halo, and I don't know if a middle ground is what some people will be happy with, because some people want that like crazy enhanced mobility driven gameplay of Halo 5. Well, the Halo fans don't want any of that. They just want a classic experience. So giving kind of each, like, nobody's gonna be happy, you know? They're gonna be like, but I just want a classic game. These Halo 5 mechanics kind of ruin the game for me, and the Halo 5 fans like, these classic mechanics ruin the game for me. So it'll be interesting to see how the game... I'm fine, you know, with it. I want to see more of the sandbox first. In Armor Hall, it says equip for multiplayer, so can equip for the campaign. In settings for rebinds under TAC map, there's a mark player, so co-op confirmed. Yeah, I'd assume so. But as for the equip for campaign, I do hope that we're able to take some of our stuff into the campaign. Here, why don't we customize our Spartan a little bit? Yeah, it's definitely, you know, live fire is not the world's most interesting map. But it's at least identifiable as a UNSC facility, which, if you remember the Reclaimer saga, sometimes it was a little bit hard to tell whose team, like, what was going on, you know? Because, like, even the UNSC stuff kind of looked over the top and very alien. Why don't we give ourselves... Here. Let's give ourselves a robot arm. What do you guys think about that? Yeah, there we go. We got a robot arm. We'll also say that our Spartan got their leg blown off in battle. Our Spartan here has taken some war wounds. Let's also give ourselves a new AI. I think Luma was the one that said haul ass at your earliest convenience. We'll play one more match and then I'll hop off, okay? Because I do need to go pick up my girlfriend, as well as get ready, take a shower and everything. Does it seem like you can partially charge the plasma pistol? For my limited usage, it seems like it's full charge or rapid fire strength only. I don't think you can partially charge it. It'll only do the overpowered charge shot if you fully charge it up all the way. I know I just asked, but will you do a video on Killing Floor? That could be an interesting idea, actually, just because Killing Floor 2 has incredible weapon animations, while Killing Floor 1, I think, while being old, has very good game feel. Like, just the gore in that game feels very good and visceral. Do you think the Infinite lack of bloom or post-processing... Do you think Infinite lacks bloom or post-processing, especially in explosions and plasma effects? I don't think this game lacks post-processing. I mean, bloom is all over the place. I'm looking at a bloom effect right now behind them, the way it's shining off the wall. That is a post-processing effect. Like, some of it is lighting, but there is bloom in this game. like, there is a bit of luminance from that, like a bloom effect that's happening. I can see it bleeding over the plasma, or the pistol a little bit. It's not utilized well on the explosions, I'd say. And granted, Halo 3 also had this really kind of like ahead of its time simulated HDR effect, which is why Halo 3's bloom settings look so like realistic even today. So if you played this game on HDR, I'd imagine the bloom would look a lot more organic and natural. Nothing a little bit of reshade can't solve. I am awful with the sniper. That's why I'm like very anxious and hesitant using this thing. There we go. At least with the controller. Someone asks if I'm looking at ambient occlusion. No, I'm not looking at ambient occlusion. I'm looking at, here, I'll see if I can find that corner again. Like, if there are some people that are genuinely interested in this stuff, let me know. Or if this is just, oh god, he's talking about this nonsense again. Let's go to that corner again. What I'm looking at is that reflection on the ground. It is slightly illuminated, and when I move my pistol close to it, I can see a bit of spillage where the bloom effect kind of overlaps my pistol. I can see a bit of that white bleeding over the pistol. It is super subtle, to the point that I would not be surprised if some of you are like, dude, I don't see what you're talking about. But there is bloom. That's what bloom is. It's that kind of like, this is going to sound very stupid, what I'm going to say, okay? I'm giving you guys a warning. The light glows. There we go. That was the stupid thing I said, but that's the dumbest and simplest way that I can explain what bloom is. And that was very stupid sounding. So I'm sorry. Yeah, the time to kill is like really fast in this game. There isn't a lot of room for you to be able to swap weapons, make use of different utilities and stuff. Can all your limbs be prosthetics? Yeah, if you want, you can turn yourself into just like a cyborg man or woman. Oh boy. How do you feel? Do you feel they nerfed aim assist on controllers? I'll have to take a look, because I remember Halo 5, so this is less subjective, okay? This is actually an area where Halo 5 just straight up wasn't that good. Halo 5 had actual under-the-hood code problems related to its aiming system. Like, there were bugs that affected your aim. Mainly, for some reason, system load and even, like, network connection would dynamically mess with your aim assist and stuff. And even, like, the response time. So, if you've ever Googled heavy aim on Halo 5, that was an actual problem. And this branch of the Halo engine, I hope that they fixed the heavy aim issue, because they did a patch for it in Halo 5. It helped, but it didn't actually completely fix it. Pro players that play on the base Xbox One say Halo 5 it feels awful to play, because you never know when your aim is going to suddenly start slowing down because of server lag, or like there's too many enemies on screen at any given time. It's bizarre. I don't think I've ever heard of a game outside of maybe Killzone 2 where game performance affects input delay and like aiming and stuff. It's a very weird bug, and I hope that they've solved it for Halo Infinite. I really hope this game does not have heavy aim. The chromatic aberration on the HUD looks nice. Yeah, it looks really nice. The HUD's very pretty. I notice it's harder to actually look up at my health bar because I've got my eyes trained on the floor most of the time, because that's where my tactical information is. Like my weapons are in the bottom right, my equipment and stuff. And so in order to look at my health, I have to move my eyeball all the way across my computer monitor to the top and then all the way back down. I kind of prefer all my tactical information being at the top of the screen. And that little mini-map, I'd maybe prefer if that thing was a bit bigger, or if I could also move it to maybe the top left of the screen. That would make me feel pretty good, you know? Alrighty, guys. They're gonna be releasing more content for this build late night. Yeah, okay, that's good then. I heard people talking about that on Twitter. I didn't know if that was confirmed or not. Alright, I'm stretching. Speaking of Killzone, I love every view model animations for almost every gun in Killzone 1. Yeah, the Killzone franchise, generally speaking, has never been good. Even the best one in the series, Killzone 2, I would consider a pretty mediocre game, even if it's a technical, impressive accomplishment for the PS3. But Guerrilla Games, at least in Killzone 1, the view models are good. It's kind of a pity that by Killzone Shadowfall, their animation department really started to suffer. Like, Killzone Shadowfall has some pretty awful animations. Killzone 3 even was a bit stiff. And even Horizon Zero Dawn to an extent. I noticed it's a bit stiff. But that was fun, guys. Hell, maybe should I play every day that this flight is going? Or would you like me to get grinding on some videos? I installed Reshade earlier, and I had to uninstall it because weird things began happening. But, yeah. Alrighty, guys. Remember, this game isn't finished, says Axel Animations. This game isn't finished, but also remember, Axel, the point of this tech test is feedback. So we do want people talking about areas of the game that are currently busted. You know, we do want to give our feedback. Hello, Late Night. I'm a huge fan, and I love your weapon evolution videos. Hope you've been enjoying Infinite so far. I definitely have, you know? Even if I disagree with certain game design choices, this has been entertaining, and it's fun that there's a new Halo game to play. Thoughts on the new Halo theme rendition? I like it. Hell, I could make a whole video just about the music of the main menu. It's really interesting. But, yeah, I will see you later, guys. This was a lot of fun.